are edited by the Rebbe. This one, which was said in the year, if you look on the first page, Tafshin Chav Vav, and another which was said in the year Tafshin Lamed Beis. Lamed Beis is what, 72, so Chav Vav is 66. What?
It's Tafshin Nun.
Yes, I know it says Tafshin Nun, right? Those Maamerim are both edited by the Rebbe. Edited means Rav Yoel Khan would write it up, give it into the Rebbe would edit it, give it back, it would go back and forth, and what would come out would be an edited Maamer. Most of the Maamerim of the Rebbe are not edited. That, even though they're printed in books and given to us, and the Rebbe saw what was printed, but an edited Maamer is a whole different thing. Right? The footnotes are generally the Rebbe's footnotes. Obviously, the words are exactly what the Rebbe once said. It's not necessarily the same as that which the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen, because a written work is not necessarily the same as a spoken work. Right? So it's obviously based on it, and the same general ideas are there. But that's why you might find Maamerim that aren't edited. There's two different editions of Maamerim that aren't edited. The ones that show up in Toras Menachem, right? The black and gold books that go through things year by year. And then there's also what's called Sefer Maamerim of the Rebbe. And sometimes the Maamerim will be slightly different in those two books because they're writing down Maamerim that were written down Baal Peh, or recorded, but whatever. They never quite figure out why the ones said in the middle of the week should be any different. But the ones that are said on Shabbos sometimes will be a little different because people remembered slightly different things in terms of what the Rebbe said, or wrote it down in a slightly different order, etc. But an edited Maamer is edited by the Rebbe. That means we can be medayik in every word in the Maamer. This was given to us in the year Tafshin Nun, right? 5750, 1990. That means it's in Sefer Melukat Dalet, the fourth volume. Okay, the first volume was just a compilation of Maamerim, and it was called Sefer Maamerim Melukatim. There wasn't an aleph on it because there wasn't a base yet. When it became aleph when they came out with base. When did they come out with base? The Maamerim that the Rebbe edited in the years 1987 and 88, Tafshin Mem Zayin and Mem Ches, those Maamerim came out. Edited Maamerim in one volume. That's Sefer Melukatim base. Right? The Maamerim that came out edited in Tafshin Mem Tes, that's Sefer Maamerim Chelik Gimel. The Maamer in Tafshin Lamed Beis, 1972, the Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li Maamer, which is another very, very fundamental Maamer on the Inyan of Elul. So that Maamer is printed in Gimel. The Rebbe said it later, but it came out as an edited Maamer earlier. Right? Then this Maamer came out in Chelik Dalet, which is the Maamerim that were edited in Tafshin Nun. That's why it says on the front, Rosh Chodesh Tafshin Nun, meaning we'd get a little pamphlet in Shul around Rosh Chodesh Elul that looked like that. It didn't look like that. It looked like those little pamphlets, right? You know what I mean? They're like the Likutei Sichos comes in. Right? And the Rebbe edited a new Maamer. There's a new Maamer out. And everybody would get very excited, and we'd all learn the new Maamer. Right? The Maamer was around. Maybe printed, maybe not, because we're used to the fact that everything's printed, but that's only because the Rebbe made them print everything. Before the Rebbe came along, so there was very little Chassidus printed. Rebbe pushed to print. Baruch Hashem. So we have bookcases full of Chassidus. Usually at the front of the book it'll say Kefi or Lefi Haras Krei Kedusha Zad Mashlita, in accordance with the instruction of the Rebbe, we are printing this book. Almost every book says that in the front. Sefer Chassidus. Any book of Chassidus says that in the front. Tafshin Nun Aleph, 1991, so that's Melukat Hay, and all the Maamerim that were edited. Now, the Rebbe wasn't saying Maamerim in these years. Tafshin Mem Ches, Tes, Nun, and Nun Aleph and Nun Beis. Basically, the Rebbe didn't say Maamerim, just a few, 2, 3. Right? The Rebbe was editing Maamerim and giving them to us to learn. Why? Don't know. And Tafshin Nun Beis. So up until the last Maamer that was edited, which is Va'ata Tetzava, that was Purim Katan Tafshin Nun Beis. So those are the 6 volumes. The first volume is just a compilation of Maamerim, lots of Maamerim from Tafshin Nun Ches, and but other Maamerim, and then the Maamerim that were edited in Mem Zayin and Mem Ches. That's the second volume. Memches, that's the third volume. Memtes is the third volume. Nun is the fourth. Nun Aleph is the fifth, and Nun Beis is the sixth. Okay? They've now come out with a slightly different way of printing it, which is useful if it's in your house. It's not so useful for a shul or for a yeshiva. They printed all of the Maimarim in Elul, like Tishrei, Cheshv, and Kislev. They printed in one volume, and they took all the Maimarim from all those years and printed them in together in 4 volumes, 3 months, which is very useful if you have it in your house. It's not so useful in a yeshiva, because that means someone takes that off the shelf and they have every Elul Maimer. So you can't take the next year's Elul Maimer because they've got them all. So that's annoying, right? It's called progress. I'm still, like the old time. What can I say? L'chaim. You should have a very, very successful Elul and a very successful year of learning. Okay. This Maamer, as you can see, was said Shabbos Parshas Re'eh, which was Mevarchin Chodesh Elul, Tafshin Chaf Vav, 1966. Okay? Now, we were going to go to Chaf Zayin pretty soon, but it wasn't going to be 1967 for another 5-6 months. 5 months. Ani L'Dodi v'Dodi li. Very famous pasuk. Right? I am to my beloved is to me, a pasuk in Shir Hashem. You can see the first footnote, Shir Hashem, the 6th chapter, the third pasuk. Rashi Tevis Elul. It's one of the acronyms for Elul. There are other acronyms for Elul. This acronym for Elul is relative to the inyan of tefillah, davening. There's an acronym of Elul that's relative to the idea of learning Torah. Ino lo yodei v'samti loch. A pasuk that's talking about the Are Miklat, the cities of refuge, which is shaykh to learning Torah. Right? There's Ish l'reyehu v'umatanis la'evyenim. Right? A pasuk from Megillas Esther, which is shaykh to tzedakah. Right? The idea of matanis la'evyenim, giving tzedakah and giving presents on Purim. Ish, aleph, l'reyehu, lamed, vav, matanis la'evyenim. Es levav chov, es levav. The pasuk continues, obviously, but es levavcha, your heart, and es levav, and the heart of your brothers. That pasuk is that acronym is the acronym of tshuva. It's the acronym of geula, ashira lahavaya v'yemru lach. Different psukim, different acronyms. Same acronym, Elul, but different psukim that relate to different aspects of Avodah.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
we have one acronym which is you read it from.
Right, that's a shiur Hashem for Yom
That has any meaning?
The Rebbe does talk about it somewhere. I believe it's the basic idea is the geula is the transformation of reality into something. Because the pasuk about geula, I believe that's the. But you're right; it's read in backwards. All right. L'Hashem Ashira. No, you're right. How do you know that?
Yesterday we learned in Halacha.
Oh, okay.
But we couldn't get the answer there.
Okay. No, no, it definitely is. Right, so you see, I should have just asked what you learned yesterday, and then I could have saved myself all sorts of breath here trying to remember all the time. Okay. Now, there's another pasuk in Shir Hashem that's very, very important. Doidi li, my beloved is to me, va'ani loy, and I am to him. Different order. First, my beloved is to me, then I am to him. Here it's I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. That pasuk, doidi li v'ani loy, we understand that al pi Chassidus that pasuk is talking about Pesach and the summertime in general. But Pesach, revelation from above, doidi li, first the Kadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself to us. Then v'ani loy, and then I will be to him. We respond to a Kadosh Baruch Hu's revelation from above. All the amazing miracles of Pesach and the times after, Yom Suf, Matan Torah, all of those incredible miracles and those incredible events that were a powerful revelation from above. And our response to that, Vani Loy. as opposed to tshuva. What's tshuva? It starts from you and I. And then a Kadosh Baruch Hu responds. Ani L'Dodi. We have to approach a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Then V'Dodi Li, a Kadosh Baruch Hu will respond in kind. And let's see what that's about. And that's Elul and Tishrei. As opposed to Dodi Li V'Ani Loi, that's Pesach. Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li Rashi Tevis Elul. Umavur B'Lakutei Torah. It's explained in Lakutei Torah. This Maamer will be explaining the Alter Rebbe's Maamer in Lakutei Torah. Dibra Maskal Zeh, that has the same heading. Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. It's in Parshas Re'eh in Lakutei Torah. The Alter Rebbe's, the compilation of the Alter Rebbe's Torahs on Vayikra, the Midbar, and Devarim. Hashaychus, the relevance to Elul, Lani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. The relevance of Elul to this Rashi Tevis. What's a Rashi Tevis? A Rashi Tevis is a remez, right? Pshat, remez, drush, sod, right? 4 ways of understanding the Torah. Pshat depends on who you are and what you call pshat. So most people call pshat literal. Rashi does not. Rashi says pshat is context, which is, and most of Rashi's pshat of the Torah is not literal at all when he's explaining the stories. Certainly, all sorts of information, right? But whatever pshat is, the basic meaning of it all. Certainly, when you would say context, that's also the basic meaning. How do you read the story? Pasuk Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin. That's pshat. Right? According to everybody, Rashi will say that that's the definition of pshat. Rashi on Chumash, right? Context, not literal. Rashi's, if you ever learned Rashi on Chumash, which I hope you all have, it's not literal at all, but it's contextual. Drush, allegorical. What does that mean? Well, according to Rashi, that means non-contextual. Things are taken out of context. A pasuk that's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu could allude to Avram Avinu. Right? Why? Well, there's a word that's the same word is used relative to Avram Avinu, and the word is used over here. And so this pasuk is not only in pshat, it's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the story. But what it's also alluding to is an idea relative to Avram Avinu, drush, right? Remez, hints, gematria, numerical values, Rashi Tevis, hints, hinting at things. Right? Hinting at the connection between things. But all it does is hint at the connection. It doesn't explain the connection. You have to explain the connection. Right? I'll say this, I say it every time and I apologize, but it's one of those bees in my bonnet, how every time anybody hears a gematria, they always go, psh, pshing about, right? What's the psh? Nothing happened yet. All I did was say, whoever said the gematria, is that this and this have the same numerical value. Did we explain that in any way, shape, or form? No. Psh. What does it mean? I don't know, but psh. Don't psh at that gematria. So think about it. That's interesting gematria. I wonder why those two things have the same gematria. Nachash and Mashiach have the same gematria. Thank you very much, right? Okay, so now that one's relatively simple, right? Mashiach is sort of the tikkun of what the Nachash made happen in the world. Okay, Peseder. Right? The Mashiach is also someone who's lin nachesh, which means to, it's sort of like to guess, right? But it can mean something. Guessing tends to be, you're only guessing, but lin nachesh can also mean something a little deeper, meaning aware of a very strong sensitivity to what could be, right? By virtue of being minachesh. Okay. Thank you. But now, so obviously the Rebbe has to explain. What's the relevance of Elul to this Rashi Tevis? Right. So now we've already talked about it. Ki be'elul huisarusa de latata. Because Elul is an arousal from below, Aramaic for hitararut milamata, which is Hebrew, for arousal from below, which is English. Risarusa de latata, Ani L'Dodi. First, I arouse in myself a desire to approach my beloved, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, when's V'Dodi Li? And this is going to obviously create a certain amount of problems. Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur, when is the arousal from above and the revelation from above? Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, hu hamshacha milamayla lamata. That is the drawing down from above below. Isarusa de la'ela, the arousal from above, and that's v'doidi li. Ani L'Dodi, that's our Avodah in Elul. V'doidi li, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the tremendous revelations of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Special days. Days where we feel much more connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Days where the very essence of the day arouses in us a more powerful desire to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not so much our Avodah as the day itself. Because when the day ends, that very inspired feeling might dissipate. Okay? So now what's problematic with what we just said? Simply. Ani L'Dodi, that's Elul. L'Dodi li, that's Tishrei. Why is that a difficult thing to say and requires explanation? What acronym are we explaining?
Acronym of the month.
Right, of Elul. The last two letters, what do they relate to? Elul? Not Elul. According to what we just said, they explained that they relate to Tishrei. Mm-hmm. So how is that an acronym for Elul if the last two letters don't even relate to Elul? Right? It should be El and then Ula Tishrei. Right? The Vav Lamed is Tishrei. Simple question, not anything too deep. Right? I was going to answer it immediately. Right? But that question is a question that is asked in both the two Maamerim that we talked about, this one that we're learning and the one that we're not learning, which is in Chelek Gimel, and they both deal with that question at length. Right? This one's also going to deal with it at length in different ways. Right? We're going to answer it very, very quickly right now. V'hamshacha sheberosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur. That which is drawn down. Hamshacha means the level of godliness drawn down. On Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is through the Aveda from below, our arousal from below that happens in Elul. And therefore the Rebbe says, V'zeu, and that is why she'elul Rosh Tevis Ani L'Dodi v'doidi li. And that's why the v'doidi li is included in the Rosh Tevis of Elul. Shagam v'doidi li, also v'doidi li, nichlal b'Rosh Tevis Elul is included in the Rosh Tevis Elul, even though it's talking about Tishrei in terms of time. Why? Because the arousal from below that happens in Elul, our avodah, and obviously we're going to have to understand what that avodah means, etc. We're just starting, so we don't understand anything yet. Right? That is sarusa de latata sheba Elul. Ani L'Dodi, I am to my beloved. He is gam. Also, interesting, parenthetical, but it's there. It's obviously not only this, but it's also a hakdama. Hakdama is like an introduction, a prerequisite, that which leads into something else from the word kodem, before. Lahamshacha, to that level of godliness drawn down, v'doidi li, my beloved is to me, sheberosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur. That since Elul is the time that we do the work necessary to bring about the revelation of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so the revelation itself, the v'doidi li of the equation, is included in the Rosh Tevis of Elul because it's dependent on our avodah in Elul. And obviously we'll have to see what that means, because Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, whether or not, I mean, most of the people in this room, I assume when you were growing up, you probably never heard of this month called Elul. Is that true? Huh? You heard about Elul when you came to yeshiva for the first time? Like, well, I heard of Elul. What's Elul? Right? True? Is that reasonable? Okay. Tishrei? You heard of. Now, you might not have called it Tishrei. You called it the high holidays, or you called it whatever you called it. But Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, everybody heard of that. Elul? Never heard of Elul. Right? So obviously Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it doesn't depend on Elul to be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the most basic sense, to the extent that it's in the calendar. As a matter of fact, it starts the calendar because the year before Elul is gone, right? So this calendar starts with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There's no Elul around on the calendar. The Elul is going to show up 12 months later on the calendar that you're going to stick up on your wall in another, 20 some odd days. I don't want to make you nervous, so I won't say anything. Right? Okay? So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur stand by themselves, there's no question. But there also is some aspect of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that depends on what you and I do in Elul. And that's going to be very much our personal connection to those days, as we'll see. Okay. So somehow the revelation of Tishrei is dependent on the Aveda in Elul, and for that reason the Rebbe just said, Vav Lamed is part of the Vav Lamed, which is Tishrei, is part of the Rosh Hashanah of Elul, because the Vav Lamed depends on what goes on in Elul. That's what we just said. How that works, we don't know yet. That's okay. We're just getting the headlines. This is the first paragraph of a Maamer. If you want to understand everything, the first paragraph of Maamer, you're going to get stuck in the first paragraph, ask yourself all sorts of questions, look in the air, hem and haw, make up all sorts of stuff, and not get anywhere. Just realize there's a question, I don't understand it, and go further. Don't worry about it. It's the first paragraph of a Maamer. I don't understand. I'm getting the basics. I'm getting the headline. But I certainly don't understand all the particulars. V'tzadik bir, Rebbe asks. Now this is, the author Rebbe also asks this. Ki mizeh she'oisi is vav lamed. The fact that the letters vav lamed, Rosh Tevis v'doidi li, which is the acronym for doidi li, heim mitevis elul atzma, they are from the word elul itself, mashma. That seems to indicate she'chodesh elul hu loy rak hakdama levadoidi li. It's not only a preparation and a precursor for the V'doidi Li of Tishrei, which is what we said it is, but interesting enough, we added that word gam, it's also that. It's not only that. Elo, Rebbe says, again, the author Rebbe says this, Sheb'chodesh Elul hu gam inyan the V'doidi Li. In Chodesh Elul, there is also a reality of V'doidi Li. There must be some aspect of revelation from above in Elul itself, such that the V'doidi Li is part of the acronym of Elul. The most basic and powerful revelation is definitely Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. But there must be some aspect of revelation in Elul also, because after all, it's part of the acronym of Elul. There must be a V'doidi Li in Elul. Now, the V'doidi Li in Elul, we can already say this, even though the Rebbe's going to say it and make it clear to us, but already now, if we're really thinking about what we're saying, we said Ani L'Dodi that Elul's all about you and I initiating the relationship. Ani L'Dodi first, and then V'doidi Li. So whatever level of V'doidi Li that exists in Elul, whatever level, and when we say that, we mean whatever level of godly revelation that exists in Elul must leave room for Ani L'Dodi, for the avodah to still be from us, as opposed to a response to him. Because if it's a response to him, that's called Doidi Li V'ani Loi. That's Pesach. Right? Yeah? What I just said makes sense? Ani L'Dodi V'doidi Li means you and I initiate the relationship. And then the Kadosh Baruch Hu responds. That's called Tshuva. That's just called Tshuva. Okay. So at first we said V'doidi Li is Tishrei. Okay, fine. That makes sense. In terms of reality, I have no problem with that. I have a problem with that in terms of the acronym of Elul, including the letters Vav and Lamed. But I have no problem with the reality that Elul is the Aveda that we do in order to appreciate on a deeper level the revelation from above that happens on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. That's not a problem. But it happens to be that there's a pasuk in Shir Shirim, and that pasuk means something, and the Rosh Tevis of that pasuk means something, and in that pasuk it says Ani L'Dodi, which is the Aveda of Elul, but it also says V'doidi Li relative to Elul. On one hand, Elul is the work necessary to bring about the V'doidi Li in Tishrei, but there also must be some aspect of revelation in Elul itself, because the letters Vav, Lamed, V'doidi Li are part of the acronym of Elul. But again, that whatever that revelation is, we already understand intuitively, it has to be such that it allows me to still have the basic avodah that's coming from me, as opposed to an avodah that's a response to an arousal from above. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I feel more connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, not because I've taken myself to such a high level, but because it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We all feel more connected on those days. Every affiliated Jew acts more Jewish on those days than any other days of the year. The frum ones and the so-called not religious ones. The not religious ones drive to shul on Shabbos, on Rosh Hashanah. Why do they go to shul? It's Rosh Hashanah. You just go to shul on Rosh Hashanah. You just do that. You go to shul on Yom Kippur. You know what they also might do on Yom Kippur, which they think is dangerous? They might fast. Most of them do. they think it's dangerous. We fast all the time. It's not a big deal. You're not going to die if you don't eat a day. People who don't fast all the time, oh my God, it's like dangerous. You have to be careful. You do have to be careful, especially if you're living somewhere where it's 120 degrees out. So, okay, be careful, but
just drink coconut water before.
I drink a lot of water before that. Nothing's going to happen. It's not a big deal. But if you talk to people who don't fast as much as we do in this religion, which I think we find annoying, but that's just the way it goes. So you fast, like, okay, Seder, nothing's going to happen. You might get a headache, you might not. You're probably not going to be as full of vim and vigor at 3 p.m. as on a normal day. Okay, fine. Seder. Nice thing about fast days in yeshiva, the afternoon's off, you get to go to bed. Okay, or whatever else you want to do. Go work out, right? You know what you guys do on fast days? You would kill me. No? Oh, no, fast days. Right? Okay. So people fast. Why? So there's the sociological aspect of it. There is that. There's the sociology. But hopefully we've learned enough Chassidus to appreciate the fact that the sociology doesn't create the reality, it's a response to the reality. The reality is that those are holy days, and a Jew with any sensitivity whatsoever to their Jewishness will feel more of that on those days. That will also express itself sociologically. But the source of it is it's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And you and I feel it also. And you daven differently on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And you talk differently on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And you might be walking home from shul on Rosh Hashanah night, and you start talking about something, and then all of a sudden you say, it's Rosh Hashanah. I'm not going there. It's Rosh Hashanah. Right? B'chalal, at nighttime in Rosh Hashanah, we're very, very careful not to talk about anything superfluous at all, because we haven't blown shofar yet and drawn down the new light that's going to give life to the whole world for the next year. And so we're in a state of what's called in Chassidus and Kabbalah din kasha, a very severe time when the whole existence of the world is hanging in its balance. Okay, so we're very careful to be Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Huh? I think if today Rabbi Levinger made an announcement, we're going to daven for 5 hours today, everybody go, 5 hours? I'm daven for Rosh Hashanah, okay, if it's, we're free, we manage, 4.5, whatever it is, we manage. Why? It's actually beautiful. The davening is amazing. It's hard, it's not easy, but it's beautiful. Okay. It's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. What else are you going to do? I have to sort of convince ourselves to eat on Rosh Hashanah. You eat a lot. Especially daven and eat for 2 days. You daven, have a meal, go to sleep, wake up, daven, have a meal, go back to shul. Daven mincha, daven mara, come home, eat another meal, go to sleep, get up, daven, eat another meal, and by that time you're lying. And then you're just so happy to fast on some Gedalia. I don't have to eat today. This is great. That's called revelation from above. That there's to put it in English terms that makes sense to all of us, I think. There's a cosmic reality that changes our conscious reality. That's real. It's called revelation. Right? Revelation can happen in time. Revelation can happen in space. There's places of greater revelation than other places. I think most Jews, when they come to Eretz Yisrael, have a heightened Jewish awareness. Why? Eretz Yisrael is a holier place than the rest of the world, just like Shabbos is a holier day than the rest of the week. It's just the way it works. There's holy places in space, just like there's holy places in time. So I think Eretz Yisrael does affect people. Right? Birthright is sort of the proof of all that. I saw the statistic 10 years ago. I assume it's the same. I don't know, but so 10 years ago, it still makes the point. 10 days in Eretz Yisrael on buses staying in 3, 4, and 5-star, I guess 3 and 4-star hotels, right? Not necessarily running into any overtly religious aspects of Eretz Yisrael, right? Some yes, some no. Some a little more, some a little less. But it might be that Mount Herzl is more important than going to some old shul somewhere. Everybody goes to the Kaiser. That's like universal. Okay, but it's not necessarily a 10-day tour. Depends. I'm sure Mayanot is more this way, and Eshet Torah's is more this way. But it's not necessarily it's anything but a religious tour of Eretz Yisrael in any way, shape, or form, right? But it's 10 days in Eretz Yisrael on a bus with 45 like-minded young people having a very good time. So the statistics after the first, 10 years of birthright, the statistics were that North American university students who had come on a birthright trip, their chances of intermarriage were decreased by 50%. Now that's an astounding statistic. That is probably the most successful program ever run. Right? That's amazing. That means you give a whole new generation, you get a whole another generation to have a chance to keep these people part of the Jewish people, because there's a 50% greater chance they're going to marry a Jew. Now for the men, that's pretty important. Okay. Wow. 10 days in Eretz Yisrael. What? Eretz Yisrael. I mean, we're here now, right? So I'm preaching to the converted, right? But Eretz Yisrael is special. There's no people come there. People go to the Kaisel and they just don't know what to do with themselves, because there's holy places in space. Right? That's a harder one for people to relate to. Time, everybody relates to holy places in time. That's universal. Space, people have a harder time. That's why a lot of Jews have a harder time with Eretz Yisrael, like the idea that there's such a place. No, there's a place that's holier. Just like a shul is holier than the gym, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay? There's certain places you'll go into and you'll experience a certain feeling. Okay, so sorry for bragging about it, but I remember in basic training in the army, so I was older. I was 28, 29, something like that. I was one of the young. There was only one guy younger than me in our group, because it was what was called Shlav Beit. All people who had come from Kutzlarts and moved to Eretz Yisrael. So we did a summer camp basic training. It was basic training. It was basic training, but not what the 18-year-olds do. And one of the guys in our basic training was a guy named Gennady. Now, who's Gennady? Gennady had moved from Russia. What did Gennady do in Russia? Gennady ran basic training for the Russian army for 20 years. He used to run so now here's in our basic training with us, right? And he's one of the guys in basic training. Now he knows more than the officers we have who are teaching us basic training, because they're 19, 20-year-olds, and he's 35, and what's he been doing for the last 17, 18 years of his life? Been in the Russian army. So at some point they figured that out, and basically Gennady would get us in line and talk to us in the morning, and they could sleep in because Gennady knew what was going on. And so you can imagine a guy who'd been in the Russian army for 18, 20 years. He wasn't soft and cuddly. He wasn't that kind of guy. He was a great guy, very special guy, but he wasn't soft and cuddly. One of the things they do in basic training is they take people to the Kotel. Gennady sat there like a baby, crying. Never been in Eretz Yisrael 2 years. They took him from the airport to Natzrat Elite up in the lower Galil. He had never left Natzrat Elite in the 2 years he had been in Eretz Yisrael. He went to Opan and he got a job. He was Russian. Like, where was he going to go? He didn't know. Right? The idea of going to Yerushalayim didn't enter his head, which is funny. Okay, I'm excited, but right. And the first time he'd ever been at the Kaisel was in the army. He went to the guy, burst out crying like a baby. And he was a tough guy. He really was. Okay. A holy place, and it just touched a place in him that he had never ever experienced before. He talked about it. He said, "That's just amazing. I didn't know there was such a thing in life." Okay. That's space. Also time. That's Tishrei. Shabbos in general, right? Holy time. Shabbos is mikdash in time. Mikdash in space. Shabbos in time. Yom Tif, that's Eretz Yisrael in space. But Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are even on a certain level more special than that. Okay, and they arouse in us a certain upliftedness. Fine, that's the V'dodi Li in the first pshat. But there must be a V'dodi Li in Elul itself, and let's see what that is. Mamshich b'Maamer. The Rebbe continues in the Maamer. And then when the Rebbe says that, he means the Alter Rebbe. Shebe'elul huzman yud gimel midas harachamim. Elul is the time of the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, those 13 attributes of mercy which are the central core of the slichus that we say at the end of Elul, right? That Sfardim say the whole month of Elul. What is slichus all about? Havaya, havaya, kel rachim v'chanan. I mean, that's the, right? What do we say every time we say slichus here? There's an announcement before slichus. What's the announcement? We're about to say slichus. You might not be able to keep up with the chazan. Usually no one can, including the people who theoretically should be able to, but can't, because they just go too fast. Okay? So, when you hear the Chazan say those words, and he'll say them out loud, Kel Melech, he's going to say a paragraph before the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim. Skip from wherever you are in the paragraph before, don't worry about it. Skip to that and say the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim, the 13 attributes of mercy with the minyan. Why? Because that's really what Slichus is all about. Invoking the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim, which Moshe Rabbeinu was taught by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to allow us and help us do tshuva. After Chet HaEgel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had forgiven the Jewish people, he taught Moshe Rabbeinu the key to tshuva, Yud Gimel Midas Arachim. The key to kapara, really, atonement. Yud Gimel Midas Arachim. We say them over and over in Yom Kippur. Okay. And we say them over and over in Elul. Slichus is all going to be Yud Gimel Midas Arachim. Right? And we're going to say Slichus a lot this year because the way it works out this year, we're going to have, I think, 8 or 9 days, even us Ashkenazim, we're going to say 8 or 9 days of Slichus. Right? Sephardim have been saying Slichus already for 10 days. They said already this morning, believe they finished already. No, they're not, no Sephardim are, what time is it, 8:10? There's no one who hasn't said Slichus yet in the whole Sephardi world because they get up early and they say Slichus. The Ashkenazim like to say the reason they have to say so much Slichus is all those kidneys that they ate on Pesach, but it's a separate issue. We all have our tougher holidays and easier holidays. We have an easy Elul. We don't say Slichus every day in Elul because by the Sephardim it's tough every single day Slichus. But on the other hand, Pesach they're busy eating just about everything and we don't eat anything. So everybody has their easier times and harder times. Okay, so. What's Elul? Why do we say Slichus in Elul? Because Elul is a time of the revelation of these 13 aspects of godliness. They're revealed in the world, and we don't know what that means yet. We're going to figure out what that means. Rabbi's going to explain that to us in a very, very clear and amazing way. What's the reality? What reality is there as we sit in this room that's different than this day? What's today? Yud, okay. Sorry. If it was Tess, it would be a little bit different than this day last month, Yud Av. Okay, Yud Av is one of the happiest days of the year because everybody's happy because Tisha B'Av's over. But Yud Av, what's the Yud Elul and Yud Av? Well, there is an extremely powerful cosmic difference between those 2 days. And what's that? Yud Elul, there's a revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim in the world, whatever that means, and that same revelation does not exist on Yud Av. Meaning, there's a greater revelation of godliness now than there was a month ago, and there will be in a month today, I take it back, that's Yom Kippur, that's a slightly different thing. 2 months from today. Right? So what is that? How does that work? What does that mean? So let's see.
All right.
And that's V'doi Dili. That's going to be the V'doi Dili of Elul. Yeah.
Confirm. This is our Rebbe commenting on the Alter Rebbe's man.
Our Rebbe generally, the Maamerim of our Rebbe explain Maamerim of the previous Rebbeim.
Right. So
when the Rebbe says he continues in his Maamer, that's our Rebbe saying the Alter Rebbe continues. Yeah. Because the Rebbe's not going to say I continue. He would just continue. Right? And I continued saying, well, what does that mean? Well, just say it, right? So the Rebbe is explaining, most of the Maamerim of our Rebbe are explaining Maamerim of other Rebbeim. Obviously more his Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, than anybody else, but everybody. This is because there are times, there's a time in the Lameds where the Rebbe was saying, clearly, it seems, because I know someone who was in Yechidus, the Rebbe in that time of year, the Rebbe, he asked the Rebbe what he should learn. He asked the Rebbe what he should learn. So the Rebbe said, learn what I learned. So he asked the Rebbe, what does the Rebbe learn? So the Rebbe said, Nigla and Chassidus. Right? Gemara and Chassidus. Halacha and Chassidus. So I guess he felt it was an auspicious moment, so he asked the Rebbe. Since he didn't ask the Rebbe which Masechta in Shas he was learning, right? Okay, that wasn't. So he asked the Rebbe, what Chassidus is the Rebbe learning? So the Rebbe said, right now I'm koching in my Maamer with the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe said he's learning my Maamer with the Rebbe Marash a lot now. Which is really interesting, right? Meaning the Rebbe also had a Seder of Limud, and what he was spending most of his time focusing on was certain Maamerim with the Rebbe Marash. Now, if you look at the Maamerim that the Rebbe was saying to us in that period, many of them were based on Maamerim with the Rebbe Marash. Because the Rebbe was thinking about. That's what was happening. Right? That's what he was learning. It's really interesting. Now, the Rebbe was learning all sorts of stuff, but I guess that's what he was focusing on. I once asked Rabbi Garner what the Rebbe does in the office all day. So he learns most of the day. So with Rabbi Garner, you don't need an auspicious time to ask another question. He's not the Rebbe. He's, an amazing person. He's still not the Rebbe. So I asked him, well, when does he have time to run the world? He said he does, don't he? He finds time. But he said he was learning most of the time. Rebbe would be sitting and learning. Rebbe finished Shas every year. So that takes time. Now, if you finished it every year, so obviously you're going to learn it a little faster than you and I. Okay, but say it a lot faster. Rebbe was super fast when he learned. But still, you had to turn the pages. Turn 2,000 pages. Of course, of the year. Read what was on it. And learning Shas didn't mean learning, I meant learning Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos at least. Because when someone once asked the Rebbe, he said he's having a hard time learning more deeply in Gemara. So the Rebbe said, well, so you can learn it the Girsa. Girsa means learn it more quickly. Just learn Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos. That for you and I is not Girsa. That's called depth. But okay, what are you going to do? Everybody has their Girsa and their depth. Right? That's the way it goes. Right? You have to appreciate things like that as opposed to be annoyed by them. Okay. So let's go weiter. The Gam Shabelol, that even though Elul hu Ani L'Dodi, and this is now the Rebbe is going to deal with what we were talking about, that even though Elul is Ani L'Dodi, Isarusa Deletata, which is an arousal from below, Mikol Makem, that means we initiate the relationship, and the relationship is not a response to an arousal from above, which means inspiration that I feel because of some reality that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is causing to happen, right? And that could also be Shabbos, right? Isarusa delatata mikol makem, isarusa delatata shala'ada, the arousal from below of the person, ubefrat, and particularly kishu rochek me'elukus, when he's far from godliness, elul. Obviously, we're talking about tshuva, so it's talking about people who might not be so close. Who al yedei. Now the Rebbe uses a word that it should annoy us, and it's interesting. The Rebbe is going to dispel this notion completely in the next few pages, but he does use the word hu al yedei hisarus, which means an arousal from above. Now the word that the Rebbe is going to use constantly after this, nesinas kayach, an empowerment milamayla, from above. Now, that word Hisarus should bother us, because that word Hisarus, that's really Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Hisarus means inspiration from above. Elul shouldn't be that. It should be Ani L'Dodi. It should be a Nesinas Kayach. What's a Nesinas Kayach? Now, the Rebbe is going to explain that at great length now, and leave out the word Hisarus, and as a matter of fact, the Rebbe is now going to say it's not a Hisarus, it's only a Nesinas Kayach. So you and I are going to wonder why this word is here. We'll figure that out near the end of the Maamer. Okay, so ignore it now. That word is annoying, and it's only there because of what we're going to learn later in the Maamer. Okay, so really focus on the word Nesinas Kayach. It's an empowerment. What does an empowerment mean? An empowerment means I have the wind at my back. I have to run, but the wind's going to help me run faster. Right? The road is paved. I have to walk on the road. I have to go to where I want to go. But it's been paved for me. I don't have to take a machete and cut down the jungle in order to get there. I'm given the power to do it, but I have to do it. The wind's at my back. Right? So I won't get a world record if I run a fast 100 meters. Okay. But I'll run fast. We'll see what that means in a Veda also. Okay. But that word Hisarus should bother us and does bother us, and so just pretend it's not there. You're going to see later in the Maamer why the Rebbe put it here, because all of a sudden the Rebbe is going to start saying it's not an arousal from above, it's only an Nesinas Kayach. He'll say that right away, right now we're going to see it. Right? So what's Yud Gim Misrachmim? An empowerment to do tshuva. But what do you and I have to do? Tshuva. An empowerment to go to get closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. An empowerment to go, and we're going to see the mashal at the end of the page. We'll see it tomorrow morning, Bez Hashem. An empowerment to go see the king in the field. Elul, king in the field. That's going to show up at the bottom of the page, because where does it come from? The Maamer that the Rebbe is teaching us, the Alter Rebbe's Maamer that we're being taught, that mushal, that parable of the king in the field, Elul, that's from that Maamer that I was going to talk about. What is the king in the field a mushal for? The revelation of Yud Gimel Midas Harachim. The king is in the field. Anybody who wants to go can go see him. But he doesn't necessarily arouse in anybody a desire to go see him by virtue of the fact that he's in the field. Why? Well, he doesn't look like a king, does he? He's wearing a suit. He's not sitting on his throne with his crown and his scepter. Just looks like a regular guy. Queen Elizabeth opening a new factory in Birmingham. What does she look like? The only time, this is for Shalom, the only time I ever got to say the bracha that you say when you see a monarch, right? I asked a shaila because the modern day kings aren't really kings like the old. The king of Jordan, that's a real king, like he's in charge. The Queen of England, okay, she's
dead.
okay, yeah, but she lives on forever in our hearts. Right? I grew up in Canada. I can't relate to the king. Yeah, the queen. She was my 65 years, my whole life. She was my queen. I waved a flag when she drove down Granville Street when I was in grade 1, right? I mean, So it was the Queen of the Netherlands, Beatrix. So she came to Eretz Yisrael to do something with some garden near the Knesset or something. I had a Dutch friend who got an invitation to go to the event. He took me along. I asked the shaila, can I say the bracha on seeing a fleshly king when I see her? Because is she really in charge or not? And it's not king, queen. That's not the issue. The queen is just as powerful as king if she's a real queen. Mm-hmm. The question is she really that? Mm-hmm. Oh, the answer was yes. Yes. Meaning, even though de facto she isn't, but de jure she is, right? I mean, the Queen of England can dissolve Parliament if she wants. The King of England can dissolve Parliament if he wants. He won't, ever. But he can. Right? Meaning when they want to dissolve Parliament, when the government falls in England, right? I know this for Americans is a hard thing to understand, but in parliamentary systems, like here in Israel, the government can fall, all of a sudden they lose their majority and the government falls. So in England, what do you have to do? You have to go to the king and say that he should dissolve Parliament because the government just fell. You have to do that in Israel. Okay. In Canada, they go to the Governor General or whatever. Okay. But so I actually said the bracha over Queen Beatrix. I never said it since. I never saw a real king or queen. But I happened to be there, and she walked by. I was hoping I'd be in a place where I could see her because I knew I could say the bracha if I saw her. So she wasn't so impressive. Okay. Well, no. But in all fairness, where was she? Walking on a path near the rose garden in the Knesset. Looked like anybody else. Now you knew she was the queen because she had a bunch of people around her, but that's the king in the field. Did that arouse in me this, whoa? No, not at all. What if you've ever never seen this, it's worth looking up on YouTube, which we're on now. Watch Queen Elizabeth, don't watch King Charles. Watch Queen Elizabeth open Parliament once. Fascinating. All the pomp and circumstance of the British monarchy. She walks in, someone has this special thing that's 500 years old, this club that he knocks on the door with, and they open the door, and the queen walks in, and they're holding this thing behind her, and she walks up the steps onto the throne at the top of the House of Commons. The Commons are all down here, and she's up here. She's wearing clothes that you would think a queen would wear, not a business suit to open a factory in Birmingham, but and a tiara here that's probably worth more than the gross national product of just about every other country in the world, right? Serious monarchy. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. You get a feel of, whoa, that's what a king looks like, what a queen looks like. When the Tsar was overthrown in Russia, so David Hardaker was a Chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, and then subsequently the Frierdiker Rebbe. So David Hardaker said he heard that they got word that they had captured the Tsar and killed the Tsar's whole family in 1917, beginning of the revolution. So what was his response? Oui. Now there's no mushal for Malchus. Now there's no parable in the world for what it means that God's king. Because that guy was, and that's what the bracha is, that God gave malchus to people. That's the bracha, you say. He gave that idea of being a monarchy to people. So we don't have that, and that causes a certain lack of our appreciation of the fact that what God says goes. We want to vote. You don't vote when the king says jump, you just jump. If the prime minister says jump, you say, you jump. I'm going to vote you out in 2 years. I don't want to have to jump if you told me to jump. I didn't vote for you. Okay, I don't like you. I mean, I have to listen to the law. What am I going to do? I don't want to go to jail, but I'm not bottled to you in any way, shape, or form. I'll call you by your first name. BB. Right? Okay. King, slightly different. So the king's in the field. That's an asinus kayak. Also, Yisarus, we'll see how that works. Third line. Let's go a little further and we'll stop. This revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy that this revelation is to every single Jew. Even those people farthest away. Elul is for everybody. We'll see. Tishrei is for everybody, but if you want to truly chaparan in Tishrei, you might have to be in a certain place and be sensitive to certain things. Because what's the mashal of Tishrei going to be? You're in the palace with the king, and who gets to go to the palace? Not everybody. Not everybody gets to truly appreciate the revelation of Tishrei. Right? Whereas Elul, the king's in the field. You want to go see the king? It's there. The queen's opening a factory in Birmingham. You want to go see her? Go to Birmingham. Go see her. Not a problem. You don't need a ticket. Who, now it's interesting, the Rebbe says Nesinas Koyach, does not say service. Who Nesinas Koyach, it's the empowerment, milamaila, from above, ala Veda Ani L'Dodi. What gives you and I wind at our back, so to speak, to be successful in the Aveda of Ani L'Dodi? The revelation of Yud Gum Yisarachim. We'll just throw it out now. We'll see it as we move further and try to understand this more deeply. But just I'll throw it out so it'll be there, and then when it becomes more relevant, we'll remember it. What does this mean? Simply, make some sort of positive. We talked about this for bringing actually. Make some sort of positive resolution in Elul relative to your behavior. It'll be easier to keep it, or less difficult to keep it in Elul than at any other time of year. And that's the Nesinas Koyach. An empowerment to do certain things that you might find difficult the rest of the year. You might be able to accomplish it in Elul. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Why? So the Abish is helping you. You have to do it though. You have to make the resolution. You have to decide that this is what I want to do. You have to think about it. And then you also have to do the hard work to make it happen. Okay, but that hard work, there'll be a little less opposition. Your Yetzer Hara will be a little quieter in opposing that. Okay. Elo, but Shagilu Shebe'elul, this revelation of Elul, who Be'ikr is in essence Rak. Now it's interesting. The Rebbe says here, it seems contradicts what he said above. Okay, we've already talked about that. Rak is only an Nesinas Koyach. It's only an empowerment. And now the Rebbe says explicitly, V'loi shegilu ma'arer es ha'adam. Not that it arouses and inspires the person, but it helps us, like wind at our back. V'aveda atzma ba mi'adam. And the Aveda itself comes from the person. Ani L'Dodi. Let's just finish the paragraph, and we'll pick up tomorrow. V'zu hi ha'mayla, and this is the advantage. Shebe'elul l'gabe yisrael shebei tshuva. And this is how Elul, on a certain level, is even more important in a higher level of our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu than the Yisrael Shemei Tshuva, than the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Baser Shemei Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance, Ubefrat, and particularly the first 2 and the last, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Hagilui, the revelation of those days, Hu Ba'ofen is such, Shagilui ma'arer es ha'adam. We talked about this earlier, that the revelation arouses and inspires a person, and therefore what? V'avodas ha'adam, and our service of God on those days, our davening, the way we carry ourselves, hu k'mei is like k'mei totza'ah, it's like a result, mi'agilui milamayla, right? We certainly don't define ourselves in terms of our behavior on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's a very lofty expression of you and me. I wish I were like that all the time, but that sensitivity I don't have all the time. And the sensitivity that I have on those days is definitely a result of the fact that it happens to be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and so I'm feeling inspired and feeling sensitive to godliness in a way that I might not feel most of the time. And as a matter of fact, it might be that if I experience that sensitivity if I experience any sensitivity to godliness on a normal day, I think that's something worthy of praise. Whereas if I don't feel that sensitivity on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, I wonder what's wrong with me. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, why don't I feel anything? It would annoy you, right? I'm not feeling anything special. And a person might get worried about that, and they should. And they should wonder, like, well, I have to, there's like some stuff stopping me here. I'm not getting the signals, like, why not? Okay, to think about that. On a regular Tuesday, I don't know, that's pretty normal. And to overcome that is really impressive. That doesn't mean we're not challenged to overcome it on a regular Tuesday. We are. Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, it's just there. Okay. The Iker Inyan. So what? So the fact that we feel connected on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, that's beautiful, amazing, and incredible. And we look forward to those days. We have sort of a love-hate relationship with Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. On one hand, they're amazing and incredible and uplifting, and then we love the experience. On the other hand, it's really, really hard work, and I don't think most of us are so unhappy when we blow that shofar on Yom Kippur, and it's over. It's hard work. Right? It's an amazing time, but it's also very hard work. Okay, but it's so special though. It's unbelievable. We have to focus on the speciality of it and not get caught up in what our Yetzer Hara might want. Okay, that's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The Iker Inyan V'Mayla Devedas Adam, but when is the Aveda Mamish all us? Aveda B'Keich Atzmai, service by the power of himself. Ani L'Dodi, Hubelo. That's Elul. So the Rebbe, in his inimitable fashion, has already turned Elul into something greater than Tishrei. Elul is on a certain level even greater than Tishrei. Because what's Elul? Our Aveda. What's Tishrei? Whatever we do Tishrei is because it's Tishrei. Okay, well, we're going to see that's not exactly true, because to a great degree what we do Tishrei, and we already saw this, is going to be based on what we do Elul. Right? Now the mashal, we're going to see this tomorrow morning, we'll stop here, we'll see it tomorrow morning, Hashem, the mashal of the king in the field. Now the whole mashal of the king in the field is the king is in the field, and he's in the field in Elul, and where does he go at the end of Elul? He goes back to his palace. Who goes with him?
We do.
The people who went to meet him in the field. So the Aveda of Elul is very, very powerful in terms of expressing our a greater expression of our Aveda of Tishrei. Okay. But the Aveda of Elul is the Aveda that you and I are doing. In the palace, if you're not awestruck by the king, there's something wrong with you. Like you're in the palace with the king. You're going to be struck dumb. Okay, that makes sense. None of us, in some level we've been in the palace of the king, okay, in certain aspects of our life. But okay, mamish in the palace of the king? I can only imagine. In Chassidus, there's an interesting shalom about the palace of the king that the Rebbe talks about this a lot in the Yerushteyasad, the mashal of going to the palace, and you might be so awestruck by the beauty of the rooms that lead into the king's chamber that you might even forget to go into the king's chamber. You're so awestruck by the grandeur of everything on the way. And what's that? That's being awestruck by the grandeur of godly revelation, so you forget about him himself, so to speak. So into the revelation and how that uplifts you. Wait a minute, the king's at the end of the hall. Go to the king. Forget about these incredible hallways. Okay. Sega, go like it.
Deletata is from below or
That what? I'm sorry?
Deletata is from below or above?
Dilatata's below. Yes. Okay, now I have to remember that.